And I'll have my phone pulled up here too, so we'll be able to double check it.
Okay, so it says it thinks it's streaming live. Now you might need
Yeah,
to still hit
it
go
thinks it's
live.
yeah. I'm pondering. Okay, I think we're here.
Are
We'll
we live? Are
see.
we?
Are we?
I'm
Is
gonna
that what we're
I'm I'm
doing?
I'm gonna look and see.
We'll give it a
Oh,
minute
oh,
for me to catch up and the world
yeah,
to catch up with us.
we
Because
are live.
hello, y'all.
Fel-
It's been a hot moment since I've been live on Facebook. Debbie and I were just chatting about technology, and my brain was atrophying, honestly. So, but we did it. We made it. We are live, and we're really excited. If you're here and you're watching, drop us a comment and let us know. Feel free to ask questions too. You know, we're really big on questions, asking questions, all of that delicious stuff. So if anything that we're talking about today you want to know more about or you're curious about, please ask away for sure. Ask away. So let's just let everyone get to know you. Okay, so I have got this wonderful, beautiful human being sitting in front of me with gorgeous pink hair, and her name is Debbie Barr. And Debbie and I have known each other for a while. And a while back, Debbie was like, "Listen, I've been writing this book," and I got very excited because I'm a book geek. I'm a total bookworm, and I was like, "I want to read it." And so I got to read it before other people got to read it. And let me say, I enjoyed it so much. The book is called The Call to to Being a Sacred Rebel, correct?
the call of the sacred rebel, yeah.
Call of the Sacred Rebel. And um, I just I loved it. So before we dive into that though, because I do want to talk about the day, can you just kind of tell people a little bit about yourself and who you are, where you come from, all of that delicious stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I am Debbie. I am from Northern Ireland, as you may pick up with the accent. So the whole way across the pond from you, Jessica. I have a background in Reiki and tarot and all that gorgeous, delicious healing energy. But before all that, I worked in corporate and had a background in IT and legal and did all the normal stuff, all the normal corporate stuff until I was made redundant. And then I had a question about who was I? When did I forget who I was and all the things? So long story short, I am a Reiki teacher, specializing in Usui and Holy Fire. I love working with the tarot, and I know that we connect lots over the cards. It's one of my favorite things. If you took all the tools away and could only keep one, it would be the cards. I'm also an artist. I love to paint, and I'm really kind of creative in my own little way. And the book has just become another part of my creativity. So this is my third book, but it's the first one that's come from my soul.
I love that.
Um, yeah. So I live here in Northern Ireland with my partner Kerry. Between us, we have four adult kids, and we have a very needy, long-haired fur baby cat called Raven, who is actually the boss of the house, and she owns us. She's currently sleeping because she does not care that there is a book. She does not care that we're on this call, and she's like, "No, I shall sleep." So
I
that is
have
me in a nutshell.
I have Raven's male counterpart in the room with me
Yeah,
today, Leo. And
yeah.
he's currently sleeping and could not care either. So, so
Clearly a thing. Clearly a thing. She's lying in bed like this with her head in her hands because it's so hard to be a cat.
it's so hard to be a cat. I love it. So I want to just dive in, and I'm curious. This is the big thing. My thing is how do we define something? Like, what does a word
Hmm.
mean to us? So, how do you define sacred rebel? Like, how would if someone said, "What's a sacred rebel?" How would you describe that?
I would describe it as someone who is ready to really remember who they are and to stop conforming to society as a whole. I think for me, being a sacred rebel as opposed to just being a rebel, right? As opposed to just being, right, no, I'm not going to do things because you tell me. There's an element of that rebellion. There's an element of, no, I'm not going to do it that way, but it doesn't come from an aggressive place. It doesn't come from a let's spark all manner of chaos. It's a quiet rebellion. It's an inner rebellion. It's that heart. Being a sacred rebel for me is it's that inner knowing that there's more to life than what meets
Mhm.
the eye, and that you're ready to go and figure out what that is without waiting for someone to tell you. That you're going to go and find that by yourself and grab it with both hands and go, this is what lights me up. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And when I light myself up, that's going to give other people permission to do the same. And I think that's how we change the world, one person at a time. So
Hmm.
for me, that's what a sacred rebel is. Someone who stands in their own power and does it from their heart and from their soul rather than from their head.
What do you think really happens when we do that? When we shift from that to that viewpoint, that perspective, that approach? How do things change for people? Like, what have you seen? Because this may be the book may be coming out just today. We timed it so perfectly. The book just came out today, y'all.
Damn
But
it.
this has been a theme in your work for years. So
Yeah.
how have you seen, like, when you watch people shift into this sacred rebel perspective, how do things change for them?
My favorite thing is watching the light come back on in their eyes
Yeah.
whenever they, so they maybe come to me for whatever reason, because I've been doing this for 15 years, right? So they've been, people would come in maybe for a Reiki session, they'd come in for a reading, they'd come in for coaching, whatever it is, right? They come through the door and they're maybe, they've forgotten who they are. They've got all hooked up on I'm a mom, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, all the different labels. I'm an employee, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other, but they don't know who they are. And as
Mhm.
they start to do this work and they start to remember who they are, they start to remember what lights them up, the light comes back on in their eyes. And that's the biggest shift. And it gives them a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose that maybe was lacking before. It maybe wasn't lacking completely. They were maybe relatively happy, just, yeah, this is life and I'm good and I'm just here for my relaxation. But then something clicks and they shift. And what I see from that then is the ripple effect it has because as they stand, it's almost like they stand up a little bit taller. They
Yeah.
shine that little bit brighter. And I know that you've got the gorgeous shine uh, event coming up with
Yeah.
Melissa, and that's just that the shine, the same thing that you guys have got going on with shine in your light so that other people have permission to do the same. And I see that then. So then their relationships shift and change. Not always for the better. It might be that they sometimes
Oh,
their relationships maybe need to shift and maybe things drift away. But sometimes I've seen it shift where people come closer together or they make new relationships and new connections and new community. And before you know it, they're standing in the middle of this life they've created for themselves and they feel proud of themselves and they're ready to stand up. They're no longer letting the fear and the negativity and the heaviness that can be in this world beat them down because they're like, even when it all goes wrong, even when we have those tower moments and it all like the shit hits the fan, you've got it in here.
yeah. And you look around and you realize it's truly a life of your own creation. Like it's yours. It's not someone who told you it should look like this or the way you felt it should be. Like it's truly yours. Even in the messy parts, it still fits. It's still, I think there's just so much more room for like that spark of like hope and potential when you move through the world like this. Um, what, what, why a book? Like what, like what, did you wake up one day and just be like, I think I'm gonna need to write a book? Like,
Well, the book has been circling for years, right? So this is probably how long this book has, not this book, but a book has been circulating here.
yeah,
Um, I remember, I remember probably within the first couple of years of my business, I was still working full time, and I was trying to build my business in the evenings and the weekends, and I was trying to create this life that I wanted to create my life. And it was after the redundancy, it was after all the stuff that had woken me up in the first place, and then I got back into this space. And I remember sitting at my desk. I was working as an IT manager for a local firm of solicitors, and I remember sitting and I was writing code, and I then closed the coding app down and I started to write stuff about book ideas that were coming into my head. And originally it was going to be called Get Off the Hamster Wheel, right? Because that's what I felt I was
wow,
on, right? I thought I was on this hamster wheel. I thought I was just like, and because I'd started to crack the door open to spirituality, I'd started to do the Reiki healing and the crystals and all the stuff. And I could see, there was a little chink.
yeah.
It's like, there it is. I felt like as I was in the corporate workplace and I was like grinding away, it was like I was on a hamster wheel. So I started writing this, but it didn't feel right. It felt wrong. I wasn't experienced enough at that point. I hadn't lived the experience. So it got parked, and every couple of years it would resurface. But in the last 12 months, my guidance team, my every time I went into the records, every time I sat in meditation, every time I was doing anything, the message kept coming. You need to write the book. You need to write the book. This message needs to get out to as many people as possible. You need to write the book. And I was like, who am I to write this book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then imposter syndrome comes in and you have the whole
How many books does the world need kind of thing?
exactly right. Surely someone's written a book like this. And then I realized that actually I couldn't see a book like this. I could see lots of spiritual books and lots of self-help books, lots of books that touched similar things. And then, of course, there wouldn't be a book like this because this book's got my story.
I was gonna say it's the story only you can tell. Like it's
Yeah,
bound to be different because you're writing from the place in your heart and from your life experience. And so it's not gonna look like any other book on the shelf.
exactly. Because, you've read it, so like there's some spiritual concepts and teaching in there, but it's primarily my lived experience. It's a mix of shamanic journeys, Akashic Records journeys, my lived
Yeah.
experience, and some thoughtful questions to make people ponder. Because for me, that's what it's about. It's not about me telling people what to do. Because my whole ethos is, I want you to be the driver of your life, not my passenger. You don't need to get into my car. Get into your own.
Yeah.
Drive your own vehicle. Remember who you are. Drive your own life. That's always been the ethos of my work. So it's not about me telling people. It's not a book that's like, here you go. This is how you live your life, and this is how you become a sacred rebel. It gives you suggestions. What I really want from it is that it might just spark enough curiosity or enough of, hmm, am I living my life on purpose or am I just on autopilot?
What I
That,
liked about it when I was reading it was that you did include the prompts and the reflection questions, which allows the reader to move out of this idea that I'm just reading this book, right? So often we consume and we consume and we listen to podcasts and we read all the books and we do all the things, but we never take the time to take what we're soaking up and really apply it and create a practice of self-awareness. And you
yeah,
so beautifully have paused in each section with these questions so that people can take a moment if they choose to practice self-awareness. What does this mean to me? How does this relate to my life? How can we take this a little bit deeper? And I really appreciate that. I think it makes the book have so much more depth when the reader is able to kind of overlay their own lived experience on it, and you can honor both at the same time.
yeah. That's what I really wanted from it because I mean, I've been guilty of this myself. You buy the book and you like nearly skim read through because you're like, oh God, because I don't know about you, but I have a lot of books. I have like a to be read pile
That's
that,
huge. I do too.
yeah, I probably will never get through them in my lifetime because it's like, somebody will recommend a book and I'll go, I must have that. And I buy it and it sits on my shelf.
Yeah.
And I thought, I've also bought the books where I have read them and I've gone through them. And I've seen sometimes there's questions and I've gone, yeah, I'll come back. And I'm
I
flicking through
never
it and I
come
haven't
back
come
if I don't do
back. I
it.
never come back. I never come back, right? Because I think I say that at some part in the book. I'm like, listen, I know this is probably going to piss you off because this is, I'm asking questions and you maybe don't want to stop, but please stop and do these because I think it's important that we put our lived, particularly for this book, because it's, as I said, it's not a how-to guide. It's my experience and my perspective, my opinion on life. But I'd love you to put yours on top to see because I kind of want it to be the thing that chinks the door open if you haven't, if it's for the people who've had that thought, there's more to life, but they're not sure why. I want them to pause long enough to follow that inquiry. Where does that go? Why is there more to life? Because what's missing?
I think in our society today, we think that the key is having the answer when the key is
Yeah,
actually asking the question. That's what
exactly.
gets moving. And so sometimes we don't know what questions to ask.
Hmm.
And so I love it that you've put the questions in to help to help to start that. You also
I find
say,
that,
go ahead.
sorry, I find that sometimes that, you know, when someone says, do you have any questions? And you're like, no,
I don't know what I should be asking, so no, I
don't know
don't.
what to ask, so I don't have a question. And then about, 3 a.m., you wake in bed with the most powerful burning question of like, existential crisis at 3:33 a.m. And you're like, right, okay, angel numbers to boot, but you didn't have it at the time. And I thought, right, well, what if I put some suggested questions in that even if they're not how you would articulate them, they might land for you somewhere.
Yeah. Yes.
That's why.
Yes.
That's why
No,
they're
I love it. You also very specifically state in the book, like very near the beginning, that you're not going to spiritually bypass.
there. Hmm.
And
Oh God, no.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I was like, oh, this is going to be my kind of book. What do you think that we're getting wrong in the spirituality and self-development world, like right now, in terms of like spiritual bypassing? Like, what are you seeing? What are you noticing? What kind of catches your attention as maybe a little bit of a red flag?
I'm noticing that there's an awful lot of work for people to continually, there's this constant, we need to ascend, we need to ascend, we need to ascend, we need to ascend, right? And they're pushing up, 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 which is fine,
Hmm.
providing you're pushing down, 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 down as well, because you can't go up
Balance.
without going down.
Yeah.
You can't have a top head. It's like I always say, if you're talking about chakras, right?
Hmm.
For argument's sake, most people know what chakras are, the energy centers in the body, right? You're talking about those. There's an awful push in the spiritual industry to be like, oh, must open your third eye and get all this wisdom and intuition. And it's like, okay, did you grind?
Yeah.
Did you grind that, or are you creating a big upside down, top heavy, weird, wobbly pyramid thing that's all open here, but there's no substance?
Yeah.
And it is a hill I will die on. Like grounding is not optional. It's not optional. I'm sorry. You do not build a house by putting the roof on first.
Hmm.
You got to dig those foundations. So ascend all you like, but please descend too, because you've got to have both, which means you've got to do the icky shadow work. You've got to go into the dark. You've got to go into the stuff that's uncomfortable. And I think where the bypassing comes and where the problems I'm seeing, and I am watching so many people that I end up having to help are the people who've tried to avoid doing the diggy down work, and they've gone straight to the teachers and the gurus who are all like, oh, ascend, ascend, go, let's go past all these realms, let's go up into the galactics, let's do this, let's do that. And I am not dissing any of it because it's all wonderful if it's grounded in reality.
Hmm.
If you can bring that, if you can actually integrate it. And what happens sometimes is people open all this, they open their third eye, their soul stars, their crown, all the thing, and it fractures their reality because it happens too fast. It opens them too quick. They don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
They're inviting in all these different beings, all this different wisdom. And then you hear the words, my spirit guides told me to. And you're like, and I want to get a big massive flag and go ding, 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 a big red flag or a bell or something and be like,
Wave
no,
it.
please,
Please stop.
please, can we? So yeah, stop.
Yeah,
So
I
for
think
me, like my people laugh at me because they're just like, oh, she's on her soapbox. Let's pull up a chair. And I'm like, yeah, because this is a hill that I will die on. You must grind your energy. Because what's the point in doing all this if you don't integrate it? What's the point if you're
that's the
floating off
thing.
into the
If you're
spiritual realms and
floating
not
off into the
here?
spiritual realms and not bringing it into the human experience part of your life, what's the
What's the
why
point?
behind it? To what end? Right? To
Yeah,
what end? I think that's when that powerful work that we do up there, if you don't ground it and bring it into the experience, the human experience, we're never going to create that ripple of change that is so needed, right? It's not just the
yeah.
act of being a frequency, it's what
Mm,
you do with that in your day-to-day life
yes,
and how you change the world around you. Um,
exactly.
and
Exactly that.
I love that in your book, you have those human experiences woven through.
Hmm.
And you don't shy away for them. Is there like a story that you included that you were like, oh, this is really hard to write, but I know I need to put it in there?
There was a few. There were stories of, of childhood. There were stories of when I lost my dad when I was 14. There was also the experience of sitting with my mum as she passed a couple of years ago. And they were hard to write because they still, but actually my mum's wasn't as hard. My mum's obviously was closer to the surface because it's only been a few years since she passed. Hers was were more healing tears because you know, it was kind of like, this has just recently happened, but I had been doing so much work on myself that when she passed, it was such a more beautiful and different experience. And because we were ready for it,
Yeah.
it was as expected as any death can be. It was expected. There was time to prepare. It was a different vibe, and I was able to take my tools into that room with her and fill the room with Reiki and do the things whenever she was passing. So that was it was very emotional for me to write that. But at the same time, when I was writing the stuff about my childhood always kind of sparks fear in me to talk about because there's still a bit of tetchiness in the wider family sometimes because
Yeah.
of the situation.
Yeah.
And sometimes I find that a little bit, it's like, do I include this or not? And I was like, well, I have to because it's my lived experience.
Well, it's part of
I
your
spent most
story.
of my
It's
childhood
how you got
confused
here.
because I didn't know who all these people were. And I
Yeah.
felt, my dad was so strict. I loved the bones of him and my world collapsed when he died. But he also terrified me. He also, he was so strict. Like one look would have been like enough. You would, you did not answer back. Which was, I often joke and say, maybe that's why he transitioned when I was 14, because I'm not sure how we would have got on when I was 16 and 17 and 8. It was easier when there was a wall of spirit between us, like, okay,
Indeed.
you know, but yeah, so those moments, and I've spoken quite a lot about more recent stuff about my redundancy and things like that. And then I suppose the other big clanger is always, whenever people go, but you were married and you had kids, but you're with a woman now, what? So that sometimes is difficult to write about because people are like, hmm. But again, it's my lived experience.
Right. Right. It's the
Yeah,
journey
it is.
of
And it's
of
all of what
this
makes me who I am.
being a sacred rebel, of going through, and it's the journey
Yeah.
of breaking through a lot of those shoulds and that thinking outside
Hmm.
of the proverbial cultural box and
Yeah,
doing what feels right to you, even though it may not seem like a logical jump for other people, right? Because at
exactly.
the
Yeah.
end of the day, you have to live with yourself, no one
Yeah.
else, right?
That's it. That's it. I mean, like, I'm not going to lie, it's been easier to be myself since mum has passed.
Yeah,
It has been, it's easier because I don't have to worry that what I say or do will upset her.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she often like she never did really understand what I did. She was like, that thing you do with your hands is what she called it. So that was Reiki.
Close enough.
She yeah, it's close enough. I didn't really elaborate about tarot cards because they were the devil cards for her because she, very, very Christian lady. So she wasn't keen on those. So because I was a volunteer with St. John Ambulance, she just told everybody I was a paramedic, which I'm not. I was like, okay. She was like, but you drive an ambulance. I was like, yes, 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 I do. So I'm not going to lie, that has been easier for me to step fully into that. So I am always very sensitive to people who come to me who perhaps do have those family ties and those expectations because
Yeah,
breaking out of that's very hard. Breaking out of that role that you play as the good girl or the good kid. So as not to upset the older parents, particularly if you're caring for them as well, like
yeah,
I was. So
yeah,
it's like that fine line between sometimes you know, I think one of my favorite lines was, sometimes I was making my mum's tea, with love in my heart, but a scream in my throat. And it was like, because it's stressful and it was
yeah.
hard and I wasn't able to be completely myself all the time. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's all those different experiences that weave in.
That's really a common thing that I hear a lot, though, with clients and students and things who come through my world is this idea of like, I'm able to be myself when I'm in my spaces and my chosen circles. But when we go with parents or family or whatever, I'm not able to do that. What would your
Yeah.
advice be? Like, I know it's very specific to the person and their values, but like, are there any suggestions or tips or things you can give to help people sort of navigate those two different
Yeah.
worlds?
Absolutely. I think you touched on it there. You hit the nail on the head when you said about values. I think knowing your own values, making sure they're yours and
Yeah.
not the ones that have been given to you from your parents,
Yep.
that's the first step. That's the first step in the sacred rebellion because it's like, well, actually, no, I'm actually those values that you hold there are not the same that I do. I might share some of them, and I might share some of, maybe some of the religious values, but I'm not following that religion or I'm not following that culture or whatever it might be that comes in, or I don't have that particular way of thinking. And for me, that's the first step is know your own values because that's
Mhm.
the start of knowing who you are. And then it comes down to I never want anybody to go in and completely blow up I'm going to be the rebel and I'm just going to blow it all. It's all just going to blow it
It
all
can
up
feel
and just
tempting some
completely,
days,
it
but it's
can.
not.
And
Yeah.
maybe it's needed.
Hmm.
Maybe it's needed because maybe some of those relationships are toxic. Maybe some of those relationships are not healthy for you. And it's okay to break those. Yeah. If it feels right for you. Yeah. And I think it's very much then about knowing who you are in this moment, so your values. I think for me, the way I dealt with it was I was doing a lot of inner work on me. So I knew who I was and I knew that,
Yes.
my mum would have said to me, you've changed. And I'd be like, yes, I've grown. And I would challenge her sometimes if I knew it wasn't going to spark an episode of ill health or whatever. I would have challenged her to a certain degree and would have always spoke my truth where possible. Like,
Hmm.
I would never have withheld. If she asked me my opinion, she would have got it. And I
Yeah.
would be telling my clients, my customers, you've got to honor your own voice where possible. You've got to
Hmm.
actually always think, is it necessary? Is it necessary that I actually speak these words right now? And are they kind and are they true? Because
Yeah.
just because they're kind and they're true, they might not be necessary in that moment. Is there a need to spark the fire? Or
Yeah.
is it just like, okay,
Yeah. Does this need to be said? Does this need to be
yeah,
said by me? And does this need to be said now? Three
exactly.
very
Because it
important
doesn't
questions.
always.
It doesn't
Yeah,
always. It's
doesn't
not.
always.
You had said earlier, like, I will die on this hill. Not everything is a hill you die on.
No, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. It's not,
And
and sometimes you can't argue with people who are not on the, I often joke sometimes to say you can't argue with stupid, right? Because you can't. But neither can you educate or enlighten. If you think about the frequency of like awareness and consciousness, the more you do the work on yourself, the more you're rising into different frames of reference, different
yeah,
levels of awareness. And it's a little bit like asking us to be able to see on the same frequency as a cat. We can't see ultraviolet light.
no,
The cat can. It's like asking us to hear the dog whistle. We can't hear it, but the dog can.
yeah,
So it's that same principle. If you're operating in a different frame of reference and you're trying to get your point across to someone who is never going to get that point, then what is the point in
what
have
is the
in
point?
wasting that energy? Just live by the example and be the role model rather than lead by example rather than trying to educate or argue with someone out of it.
Yeah, 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 because that's not really what a rebellion is. I
No,
think rebellion is a reclamation of yourself in this
it
case.
is.
And that doesn't rely on anything external to you, right? We
Exactly.
may we may
Yeah.
bump up at things that aren't in our control, but
Mm.
part of knowing who we are is knowing I can't control this,
Yeah.
right? I can
I
only
can't control
respond.
this. I can't control how this person thinks, how they,
Yeah.
and I'm going to drive myself nuts trying.
Yep.
And I think for me, rebellion is also the power of silence, of knowing when to just hold your tongue and when to be silent
Yes.
because there's power in that silence.
I love that. And I think that's where the word sacred comes in too, right? If we're
Hmm.
just looking at rebellion, it's a very different thing. But when you
Yeah.
move that sacred in and you make that one thought, one idea, it really shifts the tone, the feeling, the charge, the frequency of
Yes.
rebellion into something that's deeply intimate and
Yeah.
um and inevitably you will ripple out change from that point, but
Mhm.
it's not that hit your head against a wall
Yeah.
scream and tantrum.
Yeah.
It's coming from within and that
Yeah.
metamorphosis that comes within.
It is, and it's coming from that, and again, this comes back to this the need to ground it and integrate it because you can't hold that level of power, you can't hold that level of authority if you're floating about up here somewhere.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. You have to ground, y'all. If you walk away with
Needs
one
to be
thing
anchored.
today, ground. Yeah, Mal and I were just recently joking about um like you said, we're doing that free event shine, and whenever we design things, we're like, we need to design something that's called descend, like instead of ascend. We need to come up with something called descend. You know, about anchoring in.
The anchor.
You know? I love that. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so where can people find your book?
They can find it on Amazon. So it literally just went live this morning. I woke up to that email from Amazon this morning and went, and it's in the wild. It's there, so it should
Surprise.
hopefully within it. It sometimes takes a little while to populate, but I know it has already hit your side of the pond. So it's available on Amazon.com. It's available on Amazon.co.uk, and it should be available in the worldwide territories soon as
I love
Amazon
that.
rolls it out.
And
So
it's
yeah.
on Kindle and it's in print. Yes,
It
both.
is. It's a paperback
Perfect.
and available as Kindle as well. Because I know I personally love a proper book. I like
Oh,
I
yeah.
like a
I have got a stack of
but it's
them.
also available on Kindle for people who prefer that. So yeah.
Okay, one last question then.
Okay.
What do you hope this book sparks in people that read it?
A remembrance. I would love it to a curiosity at the start because my word of the year was curiosity, right?
Ooh, I love it. It's
So
one of my favorites.
yeah, yeah. So curiosity as to what a sacred rebel might be, and then as they read the words, a remembrance that they already are a sacred rebel. They just forgot.
I love that. Debbie, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Y'all, the book is great. It's out. You need to check it out. We'll put a link in the comments so you can find it
Yeah.
easily. But definitely, Debbie, thank you so much for spending time and
Oh,
sharing this. It's a really great point of view. It's a really great perspective, and I'm excited to see how it spreads like wildfire.
I am so excited. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for being one of my advanced readers because without you and the other advanced readers, the book wouldn't be out and it wouldn't be there. So
I love it.
thank
Anytime. All right,
you.
y'all have a wonderful day. I'm actually going to be live twice today. I'm going live with Melissa Amos. So we're going to be live on Melissa's page later today,
Time.
talking about, interestingly enough, the story only you can tell. So
I love it.
it's a
Perfect. See,
story day.
synchronicity.
Totally.
Synchronicity. I love you too. You two are so good together. It's like just the best spiritual partnership in the world, you two. It's amazing. I love it.
Oh, it's great when you get to work with your besties. So, all right, y'all, I will
Absolutely.
see you later. Thank you, Debbie, and we'll drop the link in the comments.